things one of the things that I thought was the coolest about this whole last week with Ozzy passing away was that he just did that final show 2 weeks ago. And and then I watched a little documentary on what his last month was like and and basically he did it for the fans. Like he wanted to do like he knew time was up and he wanted to do that for the fans. And I don't think we ever really get to see that very much. And, to me, he, I mean, that's a metal icon. And he was, he gave it to his last breath. And I don't know. I was a little more touched by it than I thought I would be. And I mean, was Ozzy ever an influence for you guys? I mean, was that, I mean, I don't know. I'm an
I,
70s, 80s guy. So
there, so the way I suppose I would phrase that, none of us would be doing what we're doing right now if it wasn't for him and Sabbath. Plain and simple. So I would say, for me personally, when I first heard the band, that's when I fell in love with that dark vibe of music. So yes, that definitely kicked it off. A major influence. There's other bands that are that for me, but oh my God, yeah, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that band.
I'd seen a documentary a couple years ago where they were doing an interview with Ozzy in his studio, and he pulled out an old box that had 3 inches of dust on it, and pulled out a cassette that was one of the original recordings of Randy Rhoads doing Crazy Train in the studio. And Ozzy went, he got tears in his eyes. And it's kind of like that. It's like when I was a kid, like hearing Randy Rhoads for the first time, you're like, holy, that's that's kind of when I kind of fell in love with that kind of, that metal rock sound that was like blown away.
So that's more where I would have been influenced as a musician, more in his solo career style. Because when you had somebody like Randy Rhoads coming out, trained classical musician, and a lot of the riffs he was doing was the first time you heard something like that in that platform. So a lot of diatonic scaling, which gave it that kind of creepy, weird vibe. So him and then, Iron Maiden and Priest, that's more like my flavor of guitar playing. And then when I got with Dirtfedd, it was more rhythmic. So I think with the heavy rhythms and like the old like metal drive guitar parts, I think that's what eventually coined that sound for Dirtfed. So yeah, Randy Rhoads was a big one for sure.
Well, you're absolutely right about Black Sabbath. I mean, if it wasn't for Tony Iommi, messing his fingers up, losing part of his fingers, having to learn to tune down in order to play easier, we probably, who knows? We probably wouldn't even have metal, right? But this guy did that. He started making things more doomy, kind of having that groove that we never heard before, and metal was born. So you're absolutely right, Brian. If it wasn't for Ozzy and Black Sabbath, we probably wouldn't even be sitting here. Maybe we'd all be in like a Neil Diamond like a like thing. You guys would be the horn section in Neil Diamond's band or something. But here we are. So I am so sad that Ozzy's gone. It's just that's a massive loss. But hey, he was a legend from the start to the finish. The band's still here, around. Hopefully, we'll get some more great stuff out of them, but it's not going to be the same without Ozzy.
Yeah.
Right. And I think people loved Ozzy because he like truly lived it and breathed it. I mean, he went through he was an authentic person. And so I know he went through phases. He went through like the hair metal phase where Sharon had him teasing his hair and wearing ridiculous outfits. And then he was the reality show dad for a little bit, but I know he went through that, but ultimately he stayed true to himself and as far as the music goes. And you know, like Black Sabbath is obviously before our time. We grew up in the 80s. We were little kids in the 80s, but I think without Black Sabbath, we wouldn't have the heroes that inspired us, like Dimebag Darrell, Pantera, bands like that, Metallica. So I mean, they literally invented the genre that brought us all here. So
And then with Ozfest, like I mean, that was like one of the pathways for a lot of new metal bands just to even get noticed.
yeah,
Yep.
So
exactly.
just creating that has been long lasting, and the influences are going to last forever with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that
You
was
need
my,
a
that was my true brush with Ozzy, to be honest. Or the early, I mean, like Ozfest hit, and every band that we ever wanted to discover or ever wanted to see was a part of that festival. And so for us metalheads, we didn't have it like that until that happened, and then it changed everything. So it really did transcend the game.